You think you make rational decisions. You weigh the options, consider the outcomes, and choose what is best for you. You do not, nobody does, not you, not your customers, not your investors, not your boss. The human brain is not a calculating machine. It is a pattern recognition system built to survive, not to optimize. And it makes the vast majority of its decisions before the conscious mind even knows a decision is being made. Behavioral economics is the field that maps the gap between how humans are supposed to make decisions and how they actually do. It emerged from psychology and economics colliding. And it has won Nobel Prizes, changed government policy, and reshaped how the world's most successful companies design their products and set their prices. This video gives you the 7 most important concepts in behavioral economics, the ones that explain why people do what they do, why they buy what they buy, and how you can use this knowledge without ever manipulating anyone. The first concept is loss aversion. Losing something feels roughly twice as bad as gaining the same thing feels good. That is not a metaphor. It is a measured psychological finding. Research that formed the foundation of prospect theory quantified the loss aversion coefficient at approximately 2.25. Losses are weighted about 2.25 times more heavily in the human mind than equivalent gains. Think about what that means in practice. If you stand to gain $100 or lose $100 on a coin flip, most people will not take that bet, even though the expected value is exactly 0. To make the bet feel worth taking, you would need to offer most people a chance at $200 or more just to offset the psychological weight of a potential $100 loss. Loss aversion shapes almost every financial decision people make. Investors hold losing stocks far longer than they should, because selling locks in the loss and makes it real. Businesses avoid necessary price increases because the pain customers feel losing value feels more threatening than the benefit of higher margins. People stay in jobs, relationships, and situations that are not working because leaving means accepting a loss. And accepting a loss is psychologically much harder than tolerating a problem. Every price cut framed as a discount is using loss aversion. Every limited time offer that warns the price goes up tomorrow is engineering your fear of loss. Every subscription that is painful to cancel is built on the understanding that you feel the loss of the service more intensely than you felt the gain of it when you signed up. Loss aversion does not make you irrational, it makes you human. But knowing it exists means you can catch it before it catches you. The next time you feel reluctant to cut a losing position, walk away from a failing project, or accept a lower price than you hoped for, ask yourself whether you are responding to the future or reacting to the loss. Those are 2 very different things. The second concept is anchoring. The first number you see in any negotiation, any pricing scenario, or any evaluation becomes a reference point for everything that follows, even when that first number is completely arbitrary, even when you know it is arbitrary. In a famous experiment, participants were asked to spin a wheel that landed on a random number, then estimate what percentage of African countries were in the United Nations. The wheel was rigged to land on either 10 or 65. People who saw 10 guessed an average of 25%. People who saw 65 guessed an average of 45%. The random number had nothing to do with the question. It shaped the answer anyway. This is anchoring. The first number lands in the mind and pulls all subsequent thinking toward it. It is why luxury goods are placed at the front of a store, not because most people will buy them, because once you have seen the $1,200 handbag, the $300 one feels reasonable. It is why salary negotiations almost always favor whoever names a number first. The first number sets the gravitational center. Everything else orbits around it. It is why restaurants put an expensive item at the top of the menu, not to sell it, to make everything below it look affordable. The anchor is not the product being sold. The anchor is the frame that makes other products easier to sell. Name your number first, always, and make it higher than you expect to get. And when someone else anchors first with a number that seems designed to pull you toward their outcome, call it out explicitly. Naming the anchor breaks its power. You cannot unanchor yourself by ignoring it. You can unanchor yourself by replacing it with a number you chose. The third concept is the sunk cost fallacy. A sunk cost is money, time, or effort you have already spent and cannot get back. According to rational economics, sunk cost should be irrelevant to every future decision. What is gone is gone. Only what comes next should matter. But humans do not work that way. You sit through a terrible film because you paid for the ticket. You stay in a relationship that is not working because of how long you have invested in it. You continue funding a failing project because the team has already put in 18 months. You finish a meal you are not enjoying because of what it cost. None of these decisions make sense when you think about the future only. All of them make sense when you understand that we are wired to feel the weight of past investment pulling us forward, even when continuing makes things worse. In business, the sunk cost fallacy destroys more value than almost any other cognitive bias. Companies continue investing in failing products, failed acquisitions, and outdated strategies, not because the economics justify it, but because admitting the loss feels worse than compounding it. Organizations have spent hundreds of millions of dollars completing projects that should have been canceled years before, simply because the teams involved could not face writing off what had already been spent. The money was already gone. The only question was whether they would lose more. The sunk cost fallacy said yes. The question that cuts through the sunk cost fallacy is simple. If you had not already spent the time, the money, or the effort, would you choose to start this today? If the answer is no, you already have your answer. The fourth concept is social proof. When people are uncertain about what to do, they look at what other people are doing, and they use that observation as evidence of what the correct choice is. This is not weakness, it is efficiency. In most situations throughout human history, copying the behavior of the crowd was a reliable survival strategy. If everyone is running, run. If everyone is eating the berries are probably safe. The problem is that this instinct does not turn off when the crowd is wrong, or when the crowd is being manufactured. Restaurants put lines outside their doors because empty restaurants feel like a warning. Apps display user counts, 10 million downloads, because the number signals that others have already made the decision you are hesitating over. Reviews, testimonials, case studies, bestseller lists, and waiting lists are all social proof systems designed to answer the question your brain is always quietly asking. What are other people doing here? Behavioral loyalty programs that use social proof techniques, showing customers what people like them are doing, drove 22% more repeat transactions over 6 months, according to research by Forrester Consulting. The most powerful form of social proof is the person most like you. Not a celebrity endorsement, not an expert recommendation. Someone who looks like you, works like you, and has the same problem you have, who already made the decision and found that it worked. That is the testimonial that actually moves behavior. Social proof works because it is a shortcut. The shortcut is usually reliable, which is why, when it is not, the results can be so dramatic, from bank runs to financial bubbles to viral misinformation. The crowd was confident, the crowd was wrong, and everyone followed anyway. The fifth concept is the framing effect. How a choice is presented changes the choice that gets made, even when the underlying facts are identical. 90% fat-free yogurt and yogurt that contains 10% fat are the same product. Studies consistently show that people rate the 90% fat-free version as healthier, tastier, and better value. The frame did the work. The product did not change. Surgery with a 90% survival rate and surgery with a 10% mortality rate describe the same procedure. Patients and doctors are significantly more likely to recommend the surgery when it is framed as survival than when it is framed as mortality. Same numbers, completely different emotional response. The framing effect is why language in every consequential domain is so carefully engineered. Estate tax versus death tax, freedom fighters versus terrorists, collateral damage versus civilian casualties. The words frame the reality, and the frame shapes the conclusion before the thinking even begins. In business, the frame you put around a price, a product, or an offer is often more powerful than the price, product, or offer itself. Pay monthly and save versus pay annually and pay less. $99 versus $100. Your free trial ends tomorrow versus your account will be charged tomorrow. None of these change the facts. All of them change the decision. The frame is doing more work than most people realize in almost every important moment of your life. The sixth concept is status quo bias. People have a strong preference for the current state of things. Change requires effort. Change carries the risk of making things worse. Change means leaving behind something known for something unknown. So most people, most of the time, do nothing. Status quo bias is the single most powerful force in product adoption, policy implementation, and behavior change. It is why the default option, the choice that happens if you do not actively intervene, is so consequential. When UK employees were automatically enrolled in pension plans with the option to opt out, participation rates went from below 50% to over 90% in most organizations. The pension itself did not change. The default did. When organ donation became the default in countries that switched to opt-out systems, donation rates increased dramatically. The policy did not compel anyone. It simply changed what happened when people did nothing. Status quo bias also explains why it is so hard to get people to switch banks, change phone providers, or move away from software they have used for years. The competing product might be genuinely better. But better is not enough to overcome the effort, uncertainty, and psychological discomfort of change. You have to overcome the status quo first. And the status quo is defended fiercely by the human mind, even when the mind has no strong attachment to the current situation. If you are trying to change behavior, yours or someone else's, the most important question is not what is the benefit of changing. It is what is the friction stopping the change. Remove the friction. The change often follows on its own. Design for the default, because the default is what most people will end up with. The seventh concept is scarcity. Things that are rare feel more valuable. Things that might run out feel more urgent to acquire. Things we cannot have feel more desirable than things we can. This is partly evolutionary. Scarce resources genuinely were more valuable for most of human history, and partly social. If others are competing for something, it signals that the thing is worth competing for. Only 3 seats left at this price. Offer ends at midnight. Limited edition. Wait list only. All of these are scarcity signals. All of them trigger a combination of loss aversion and social proof that creates urgency where urgency might not otherwise exist. Scarcity also operates on time. A deadline compresses thinking and forces a decision. Without a deadline, the decision can always be made tomorrow. And decisions made tomorrow are decisions that usually never get made at all. BCG research from 2025 found that companies applying behavioral science principles, including scarcity framing and commitment mechanisms, saw an average 12% increase in customer lifetime value across retail, telecom, and banking sectors. Scarcity works even when people know it is being used on them. That is the unsettling part. You can read this explanation, understand the mechanism completely, and still feel the pull of a countdown timer. Knowing a bias exists does not eliminate it. It just gives you a fighting chance to pause before acting on it. Here's how to put all 7 concepts together. The insight that connects loss aversion, anchoring, sunk cost, social proof, framing, status quo bias, and scarcity is this. Humans do not make decisions from a neutral starting point. Every decision is made from a reference point, from an anchor, from a default, from a frame, from a social context. The question is never just what are you deciding? The question is always, what conditions surround the decision? A 2025 meta-review that analyzed over 500 behavioral economics interventions found that the strongest and most durable behavior changes came from interventions grounded in identity, personalization, and emotional salience. Not tricks, not manipulation. The most effective applications of behavioral economics work because they align with how people already want to think about themselves. You can use every concept in this video to manipulate people into decisions that are not in their interest. Some businesses do exactly that. You can also use every concept in this video to design better products, clearer communication, fairer systems, and more honest pricing, so that the decisions people make are the ones they would choose if they had thought about it carefully. The knowledge is the same. The application is a choice you make. You do not make decisions. Conditions make decisions. You just sign off on them. That is 4 years of behavioral economics in 15 minutes.